The war in Europe had finally ended. But for a select group of high-ranking German officers, the true shock was only just beginning. In the summer of 1945, the United States launched a program designed to re-educate key prisoners by exposing them to the undeniable reality of Allied society. Several senior Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe officers were chosen for a carefully supervised tour of the United States. Among this group was General Major Hans von Richter, a 52-year-old veteran of the brutal Eastern Front, and Oberst Karl von Brandt, a 48-year-old staff officer who had served in the OKW. Both men had been captured during the final collapsing weeks of the Reich. They had braced themselves for internment camps and harsh treatment. Instead, they found themselves aboard a U.S. Army transport plane, where the first blow to their worldview was served on a tray. Hot coffee, real eggs, and fresh bread. Von Richter turned to von Brandt during the meal, disbelief in his voice. "This is for us?" Von Brandt nodded slowly, struggling to comprehend. "They feed prisoners like this." The aircraft touched down at an airbase in Virginia. To their surprise, the officers were transported in staff cars, rather than cattle trucks, to a temporary holding facility. The accommodations were startling. Clean barracks and showers with hot running water. They were issued new uniforms, American khaki, yet respectful and tailored to fit. The following day, the true program commenced. A U.S. Army colonel addressed the group in fluent German, setting the tone for their detention. "Gentlemen, you will see America as it is. No propaganda, no staged events, just the truth." Their first destination was a local supermarket in a nearby town. Driven in open jeeps, the officers anticipated small, rationing-stricken shops with empty shelves, similar to the ruins they had left behind in Germany. Instead, they arrived at a large, brightly lit building emblazoned with the name Piggly Wiggly. Glass doors slid open automatically, a mechanical marvel that halted the officers in the entrance. Inside, aisles stretched in every direction, overwhelmed by abundance. They saw the produce section, where mountains of fresh fruit, oranges, bananas, and apples were stacked in perfect pyramids. There were meat counters displaying thick steaks, roasts, and chickens. Dairy cases overflowed with milk, butter, and cheese. Shelves were packed with canned goods, cereals, cookies, and frozen foods behind glass, all at low prices. Crucially, no ration stamps were required. Von Richter walked slowly down an aisle, picking up a package of bacon. He examined the thick slices, real bacon. He turned to von Brandt. "This is real." Nearby, von Brandt stared at a display of Coca-Cola bottles. "Hundreds of them," he whispered. "Cold." They had been told American propaganda used fake abundance. "This cannot be fake," he murmured. A store employee, a teenage boy stocking shelves, noticed them and smiled innocently. "Need help finding anything, sir?" The officers were left speechless. The most unsettling sight was not merely the food, but the sheer plenty of it. There were no lines, no desperate empty shelves, and no hunger in the eyes of the shoppers. These were just ordinary Americans filling carts with more food than a German family might see in a month. Von Richter carefully placed the bacon back on the shelf and looked at the American colonel escorting them. "You have all this," he said, "while fighting a war on two fronts." The colonel simply nodded. "That's America." The officers proceeded through the aisles in silence. For the first time, they began to grasp the true scale of what they had fought against, not just armies, but a nation capable of feeding itself without limit. The supermarket was not propaganda. It was a crushing reality, and the first crack in everything they had been told. This visit was not an isolated incident. It was the commencement of a meticulously planned program. The American officers intended for the German prisoners to witness the truth with their own eyes. Following the initial stop in Virginia, the group was driven to a massive A&P store in Washington, D.C. The scale of the building was immense, with aisles wide enough for 2 carts and lights as bright as day. The American escorts watched the Germans' reactions closely. General Major von Richter walked slowly, almost reverently, stopping at the meat counter. Rows of steaks, roasts, and hams hung without empty hooks, available without ration cards. He picked up a package of bacon, noting the perfectly marbled thick slices. He turned the package over, searching for a trick, but found none. Oberst von Brandt stood transfixed before the dairy case. He saw butter in pound blocks, cheese in varieties he had never encountered, and milk in cold, sweating glass bottles. He whispered to von Richter, "In Germany, butter is gold. Here, it is ordinary." A store clerk noticed their uniforms and smiled. "Need help, fellas?" Von Brandt managed to stammer. How much milk do you have?" The clerk laughed lightly. "As much as you want." The Germans then moved to the canned goods aisle, viewing hundreds of brands of soups, fruits, and vegetables. Von Richter picked up a can of peaches in syrup, reading the label. American peaches, packed in California. His mind drifted to the hunger in Berlin, children suffering from rickets, the elderly fainting in bread lines. His hand trembled as he carefully replaced the can. In the bakery section, the aroma of fresh white bread and rye rolls baked that morning filled the air. Von Brandt closed his eyes. He had not smelled fresh bread since 1941. An American officer, Captain Ellis, watched the scene quietly. He would later note in his report, "They didn't speak for a long time. They just looked like they were seeing a different world." The visit concluded at the checkout counter, where an ordinary American housewife unloaded her cart. It was filled with steak, eggs, butter, fruit, and canned goods. The total cost was less than a single day's wage for her husband. The Germans watched as the cashier rang it up. No stamps, no limits. Von Richter turned to Captain Ellis. "This is real." Ellis nodded. "This is Tuesday. Every day is like this." On the bus ride back, a heavy silence fell over the officers. Finally, Von Brandt spoke. "If this is America, we never had a chance." Von Richter stared out the window at the passing landscape suburbs with manicured lawns, cars in driveways, and children playing. "They told us it was propaganda," he said quietly. "Lies to weaken our will. But this is the truth." The supermarket had accomplished what no battle could. It had broken their belief in the superiority of their system, not with bombs, but with butter. The program continued with visits to factories, farms, and schools, but nothing struck harder than that first supermarket. It was the moment they understood the scale of America's power. It was not merely military, but economic, the power to produce so much that even enemies could be fed. This was the power that made total war sustainable, and the power that, in the end, decided the war. By late 1945, the scope of post-war integration expanded to the medical field, where German nurses became indispensable in American hospitals. The wounded kept arriving men from Okinawa, Iwo Jima, and the final push in Europe. The workload was relentless, yet the German women worked without complaint. Their hands, trained in the chaos of field hospitals, were steady and sure. American surgeons began to rely on them. In one Denver ward, Liesl Hartmann assisted in a complex amputation. The surgeon, exhausted, handed her the scalpel for the final cut. Afterward, impressed by her composure, he remarked, "You've got nerves of steel," Liesl replied quietly. "We learned under bombing. The patients noticed the difference, realizing that skill recognized no nationality in the halls of healing.